And hello again, dear ones. I'm Rev Briz,
I'm Rev Z.
and this is New Thought Today on the New Thought Media Network. This happens every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Mountain Time, 4 o'clock for you East Coasters. And Rev Z and I and our guests have a chance to get together and look at the guiding principles and the guiding statements of the global vision, of what we believe, of the Centers for Spiritual Living, of Science of Mind. We're looking at all, there's really nothing in the religious science, New Thought philosophy that's out of bounds here. And over the last several weeks, we've been looking at the global vision. So we're going to continue that today. I do want to let you know that we're going to have a guest with us next week, and the Right Reverend Reverend Doctor David Alexander is going to be with us next week to look at a lot of this information as well. So, but this week we want to jump in, and we're looking at principle number 7 this week. We envision a world in which resources are valued, cared for, and grown, and where there is a generous and continuous sharing of these resources. A world in which resources are valued, cared for, and grown, where there is generous and continuous sharing of these resources. Z, why don't you open us up? What's your initial inspection of that statement?
Well, I think it most definitely is a logical next step from what we were looking at last week, where we talked about a sense of belonging and a sense of well, everybody has enough, whatever it is. And so this, I think, is an outshoot of that in terms of we need these resources that we have, whether it's food, clothing, or shelter, as the statement normally goes, and everything else that fits in there, i.e., ourselves, are also resources. How do we cultivate environment? How do we create a place where all of the resources, mineral, vegetation, or human, are valued, that they're utilized properly, and that we create an environment for them to increase in skills, increase in productivity, and do it without depleting anything, i.e., depleting the person, depleting the planet, depleting, the growth of certain products or animals, however that works out to be.
Right. Right, exactly. Right. We've got to have sustainable practices in place for all the aspects of what we're doing. Because, and I love the parts of this, the early part of this statement, in that place where we emphasize that it's grown, it's natural, it's part of the natural flow. And folks that have been listening to this show, you've heard Reverend LZ and I talking, and we use analogies of nature all the time because the natural world it provides us a blueprint and an idea to say, okay, is what I'm doing creating and sustaining life? Or now to switch metaphors just briefly, or am I just throwing chemicals after plastic and chemicals after a problem and trusting that science will take care of it instead of nature taking care of it,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So we're going to invite you today as we explore this, as we dig deeper into this. We're going to invite you to a couple of things. Number one, by all means, comment in the comment box if you're watching live and your comment fits with the conversation. We might bring that on and discuss that a little bit as we go. And you're more than welcome to comment after the fact, and we're happy to continue the dialogue after the fact on the thread that goes with this video as well. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
so thank you for being with us today. Again, this is New Thought Today, happens every Tuesday on the New Thought Radio Network, Media Network. And today we are looking at the global vision. Principle number 7, just a real quick, we envision a world in which resources are valued, cared for, and grown, and where there's a genuine and continuous sharing of these resources.
Yeah.
So, right, we're valued. Okay, I think most people understand. We have to, you have to look at the things that are happening in your world and the things you want in your world and decide, hey, are they worth it here or not? and then we nurture that. We bring that and we cultivate that. So we've been talking about that. So Z, let's jump into this week. Let's jump right into the how are we going to make this happen?
Whew. Well, I think part of it is, uh, as you know, uh, the new administration, President-elect Biden has brought uh, the whole idea of global protection, if you will, with the global warming and climate changing
Hmm.
um, awareness back to the table. And
Right,
basically, I think that is a great way because although it's labeled as climate control or climate awareness, however people want to phrase it, it's really about the integral relationship between the planet and the environment around us,
right,
and how those two things work together and how those two things support one another, and that you have to value them for the planet to be sustained in a healthy way and sustained in a way that it's here. Those resources are here for our future generations.
right. Therein is the key, right? Keeping things, not allowing the systems to die until the future generations have a chance to get their hands on them and clean up some of the mess that's been made.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, I think that's the biggest thing I hear so often is that there were more than a few people in our generation, my generation, but that my kids look at it and say, "Man, a lot of you guys kicked the can down the road."
yeah.
Not everybody, but a lot of you, okay, and we did, and we didn't care for the planet. We didn't as much as we can. Now that's changing and that's shifting, and I see a lot of examples of that in how Buoyant Slat and what he's doing to clean up the oceans and to get rid of all the plastic in the oceans. What people are doing in various places to look at how do we recreate these systems differently? How do we go about caring for something that seems so much bigger than us, the planet? That and I get it. It seems like, what's a little harm? What's one extra plastic spoon in the world, or what's one more plastic straw in the world? We
Right.
can we can generalize those and mitigate our culpability in that. But at the end of the day, we're still choking the planet with every plastic straw. With it, I'm going to get on a high horse here about single-use plastics if you're not careful. Uh,
Well,
so,
interesting thing there is, and I hope that for the next week I'm gonna find this so we can put it in there because it just popped into my head. I saw this documentary. I forget a lot of the details, but what it was about, it was a photographer who's been taking photography for since the 30s, I think, early 30s, and he was showing how different environments have changed. He looked at different animals going extinct, um, and the number is increasing in terms of the devastation that's taking place because we don't really value those resources anymore. Now, uh,
right,
when the industrial age came around and it brought so much in terms of benefit and jobs and things like that to the people,
hmm,
the vision got set on let's get everybody jobs and a chicken in the pot and all of that stuff. But there was very little long-term vision that says, well, what happens if we just keep digging all the coal, or what happens if we just keep overfishing all the oceans,
right,
and what happens if we keep cutting down all the trees where these different animals and plants and insects that create this integral nature of life have no longer a habitat to live in. And so now some of those things are coming back to bite us. And now we gotta try to retrofit or pivot or whatever it takes to try to swing that pendulum back more to the middle to sustain life for a longer period of time.
yeah. Yes, absolutely, right. It's the human superiority that maybe the dolphins would argue with us about that, but I don't think we're smart enough to listen to the dolphins. So, um, A little shout out to Douglas Adams fans in the world.
Yes,
So,
yes.
uh, and again, we are seeing some of this, folks, right? I just read a story this past week of a flower that hasn't been seen in 100 years in England, in the UK somewhere, and everybody thought it was gone. It had been buried and there were, I guess, there were seeds, and the seeds were way down deep, and it all of the weirdness, all the wonderful, somehow it's finally after 100 years, the conditions were just right for that flower, that seed to germinate and reemerge. And botanists are having a heyday in the UK because this flower that hasn't been, and it's a small little flower. It's not like it's some, the resiliency of life, of nature, of spirit, of God, of this oneness that we live in. On a big scale, I can't really. It's going. The Earth is going to survive beyond us. The question is, are we going to be good stewards while we're here?
Right, right.
Right.
And what will it look like once it's done in that evolutionary process, right? Because one of the good things that excites me about what you just said, and I hadn't heard of that, is that you know I hope they were able to get the shell of the seed if it was big enough. Probably wasn't, but some way of carbon dating or some way of trying to estimate how long that seed, when was the last time that plant seen,
Yeah.
how how old can you determine within whatever the plus or minus is that the seed has been around in the ground. So now we can begin to look at this evolutionary process of life and say, here's something that was buried in the ground. Maybe it was down, it didn't decay. Something kept it preserved so that it could germinate. It got to the point to where it was close enough to the ground to get some water and get some sun and germinate. I mean, the whole process of life is there, and that's what this thing is talking about. It's a resource that was buried somewhere. We don't even know how. We don't even know how long.
Yep.
But in that environment, it was cared for, it was nurtured, and it grew.
Yeah.
And that's what we're talking about. How do we create this environment where we may not know all of the ins and outs of how these things work, but we do understand the idea of valuing it and cultivating and creating an environment for it to do whatever it does. And then when it happens, how do we nurture it for growth?
Right. Yes, exactly. And I'm sure the article I saw didn't say anything about whether they were able to get a seed. I guess we'll have to see how this plant does. But they did say that exactly what you're talking about. This seed was buried deep in a pond, in an old pond, and the pond is being reclaimed, and somehow they just got enough dirt off the top that the seed was in that perfect zone.
Wow.
Crazy, wild. And again, that's an example of how nature, God, will sustain. We will. And what I love is that means that I'm also a part of that oneness of that God nature. So no matter how deep you bury me,
Yeah.
sooner or later I have the ability to come back. I can grow again. And no matter what befalls me, no matter what shows up in my life, no matter what weird kind of crazy conditions, let's talk 2020, no matter what, we have that within us to grow and expand and become something new.
And that is the idea of new thought, right?
Yeah.
In that part of the essence of new thought is how do we begin to look at things in a different way, in a more introspective or a more expansive or out of the box, as it said sometime, that allows me to find something different in this particular person, place, or thing that I didn't see before because I was looking at it with my blinders on.
Right.
And what New Thought today is about, and especially as we're looking at here, based on a religious science perspective and how it expands into all areas of life, is how do we begin to do just that? To be open at the top, as Ernest Holmes said, to come up with new ideas, to look at unconventional ways of doing things. I mean, one of the things we talked about last week in terms of the belonging and taking care of things was the whole idea of community gardens and cooperative living and these kinds of things where now we didn't say this last week, I don't think, but I would throw in the whole barter system, right? Of
Right.
how do we begin to create an environment, and I think the time is right for that right now.
Yeah.
When we look at how many people are out of work, and we see these long lines on TVs of people waiting to pick up food. Uh, there's a way there. These people have skills. These people have talents who, for whatever reason, have been unemployed. There has to be a way to network together to say, I can do this and you can do that. So let's change off. I got a little food. I need my plumbing fixed. Let's figure out a system, especially with the internet and computers. We should be able to do that.
Right.
And that shows we value, we're growing it, and and we're taking care of those resources.
Right. Exactly. This is the time I'm reminded. I was asked earlier today to help with a project here in the Denver, Colorado area. There's a great organization, Urban Peak. They work with homeless teens on the street, and teens that just need a bit of help and a recognition and a fresh start and a jump start in many ways. Seeds, if you will, just ready to blossom. And it's getting cold in Colorado. We need jackets, and she's going to start collecting jackets and asked me, hey, can you help? What can we do to get this out there? To and folks, in right now, I get it. It's easy to stay home. Everybody's telling us to stay home. And it doesn't escape Rev Z and I that today is Giving Tuesday, and everybody's asking you to be a part of this process of giving, and we're going to do that too. And we want you to be conscious about it. We want you to think about it for a minute. We don't want you to just hit the donate button and drop your credit card number and oh well, whatever. There's something bigger emerging on planet Earth right now. And we call that the global vision. and and in order to bring this forward, in order to live this principle, to live this idea, where we're generous and continuous in our sharing.
Yeah, yeah.
So whether that's giving away a jacket, making a meal for somebody, dropping $20 in somebody's donation or fundraising program, it's not just today. This is an attitude we've got to cultivate. This is a consciousness we're cultivating.
And you just really woke something up in my mind. Two things. One, in terms of the environment we're in now, the environment is set, or the conditions rather are set for us to create an environment that supports these statements that we're talking about here, growth and value. And it made me think back to my own birth, right? I was born premature, and because I didn't pop out of the oven, so to speak, on time, they put me in an incubator. It was just way back in the olden days, if you will. I was in an incubator to create the conditions and the environment to support the resources. And that's what we have the idea, the opportunity to do now, to create these incubators for people to grow and become strong enough in their life principles so that they can do their own thing. Now, the other thing is this. We know, for a long time we've seen, bioorganic, sustainable, reusable. And the first thing a lot of people might say, and I've said it myself, to be honest, man, that stuff's expensive.
Right.
Right. But, and it might be. But when we look at it from a long-term perspective, they have the old saying, don't cut off your nose to spite your face, right? And so we may not be able to do it all at one time, but we can pick one thing that we're going to do consistently and to value the resource. I am going to consistently compost, or I am going to consistently recycle, or I may not buy everything organic, but all of my tomatoes and cucumbers are going to be organic. We
Yep.
start somewhere. We create that incubator for that idea to happen, and then we let it move.
Yep. Exactly. And I love that, right? We start where we can. We do what works. It may be a small piece. It may be you may be able to make a bigger contribution right now than maybe you've been able to do before. We've been my family. We've been talking about starting a worm garden, a worm,
Mhm.
or instead of composting. Now, and I think it's like $35 for 500 worms or something, and you can do it with a couple of 20-gallon tubs from one of your local shops, and it's real easy. And then you just throw everything in the worm bucket.
Wow.
It's little things, folks, right? And if that doesn't work for you, then yeah, by all means, start with a composter or uh, gosh, let's get rid of the single-use plastics.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
okay, I'll get off that
Well,
soapbox.
but and think about, and just think about, because I try to do compost. I'm not as diligent. I have a garden, so it helps me. But now you see these little compost. Some people say, "Well, I don't want to do it because it smells." Da, da, da. But now they have these little ceramic compost bins where you can throw your old lemons if you don't use them, your lemon rinds, or your coffee grinds, or the if you the ends of the stalk of celery. Put that in there, dump it in the bin. If you're not growing food, you can put it in your flowers. Uh, and if you get some worms, you put the worms in, they'll help turn it over and convert it even faster and better. I mean, simple things that may be a little out of the ordinary cycle of life for each of us now, but we know the more we do it, the easier it becomes, the more it becomes a habit, if you will. And we begin to say, oh, now we have to watch so that we don't become snobs, right? And we go to somebody's house. What do you mean you're not putting that in the compost? All right, everybody got to start where they are. But then we encourage them. Hey, you can use that for your garden. Well, I don't do it. You can put it in your house plant. You can put it in your flower bed outside, or you can put it in your garden. But it's the recycling
Right.
of those resources. And that happens not only at the earth level, let's step it up now to the human level. We have seniors who have lots of skills and lots of experience who could be given valuable, input and talents to various things, but we don't look at how do we utilize those resources.
Right.
There's a whole nother avenue be open right there.
Exactly. If you can't drive 50 miles to get to work and punch a clock and work in an office, then you're not valuable anymore, right? Oh, wait a minute. Everybody's working from home. Hey, folks, we're going to take a quick break here and give our sponsors a chance to say hello and give Revzy and I here a chance to have a sip of water. We'll be back in less than a minute. You're watching New Thought Today, part of the New Thought Media Network. Let's learn a little bit more about who we are. New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring. And we're back. This is New Thought Today on Tuesday, December 1st. I'm Rev Briz here with my co-host, Rev Z, and we're talking about the global vision. And today we're talking about what we consider principle number 7. We envision a world in which resources are valued, cared for, and grown, and where there is generous and continuous sharing of these resources. Now, Z, in our preparation for today's program, right, we it didn't take very long to come up with a whole ton of ideas on how to generously and continuously share the resources that we have and that we're cultivating, growing, all of those types of things. So help us kick us off. Share, get us started. Some of the ideas we were talking about yesterday that we want to share with the audience today.
Well, one was a very simple one. They used to have these smile cards, right?
Hmm.
That that you could get and make and hand out to people for different things, just to create a different atmosphere for people to smile, for people to be joyous. And I think those are going to have a big purpose and a large, a wide place to distribute them, with all of the tension that we're going to need to bring it down a bit, just to do that. Then to walk up to somebody and give them a card, hey, smile, love you, whatever,
Right.
right? Break the ice, and then keep moving. You don't need to. It's not about trying to dialogue. It's trying to dial down the temperature. Another one of the ideas was the whole idea that everybody's heard about is paying it forward. There are certain restaurants that allow you to come in and have a meal. There's no cost if you can't afford it, but if you can, they ask you to put something towards the meal, whatever it is, even if it's a little lower than what you thought the meal was or more than that, so that the next person can get that free meal. And if it's truly a free meal, you can't afford it, great. Glad you had a great meal. See you next time. And so these simple things are available to us. We have to begin to open up our mind to look at life differently.
Yeah, absolutely. And folks, we'll leave links and notes in the show notes for this on the podcast and drop a few in the comment box on the show after the program as well. Uh, these are there's so many incredible ideas. And I remember the smile cards. You can still get them. Actually, because of the pandemic, I was on their site yesterday. They're not printing them anymore. Unfortunately, they used to. You could just send in your address and they'd send you a handful of cards. The idea is you do something good, something anonymous, something, leave a whatever, and leave the card and let the card continue around the world. Let that sense of generosity continue to circulate again and again and again. Uh, and it's actually the same folks that created the idea of the karma kitchens.
Yeah.
So
Tell
there's
us a bit more about that.
Yeah, all part of the same network. So the Karma Kitchens, let's see, there's over, I forget how many there are across the country. There's only a handful on the West Coast, one in LA and a couple in the San Francisco Bay Area. There's a handful on the East Coast. But just as you were saying, you come in and you're fed. And the idea is that you pay what you feel appropriate to pay forward, not what you think you got for the value, not what you got off the menu, not what you think they should make on the menu from the menu, but what works for you to be in that cycle of giving and receiving. So really the we're coming back to that principle of giving and receiving here, right? If we're not being generous with what we have, how can we ever expect our lives to be for more good to flow into our lives?
Yeah, yeah, and I was just looking at something because I wanted to make sure I got it right. This whole thing about effectively using resources. Um, they this article I was reading the other day, and I wanted to make sure I got it right. There's 4 points. First thing is plan to plan. We can't do this haphazardly. It's too big, right? We need to get a few people uh, who are steeped in specific areas, no matter what they are, whether it's farming, whether it's restauranteering, technology. Come up with a plan. Then, after you have a plan, develop a systematic approach about how you're going to um, attack this program. How are you going to get it implemented? How are you going to make a change so that it becomes effective? Then we get to what we're doing right now. How do I begin to use technology in the implementation of this plan? And once you've got it implemented and it's rolling, then it's a two-pronged thing. How do I continually manage the resources and manage the project so that it continues?
Yeah. It's interesting, folks. I find that for-profit corporations drive innovation, but nonprofit corporations put that innovation to work.
Yeah.
And nonprofit corporations really are, from my perspective, the organizations that are changing the world. So we know there's more than enough of whatever's necessary to support you in whatever that change is for you,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Well, and one thing about the nonprofit organizations, because they run on such, most of them anyway, run on such grassroots and very lean budget, especially now, they have to be extremely creative, and they have to understand this whole idea of managing resources and valuing resources very well.
Right.
And so they begin to be the ones who come up with these generous and well thought out ideas of how we can save or how we can benefit more or how do we extend this beyond, because they have to.
Right. Yeah.
And so, a great model that could take place, and I don't know how to do this, but it's to begin, and I guess it takes place when for-profit corporations partner with a nonprofit corporation to
Right.
expand or extenuate an idea.
Yeah.
So there's a challenge to corporate America. Find Everybody has a core value or a set of core values or some mission statement that they have for their company and how they give back. Find a nonprofit organization that matches one of those points or several points and say, one of our core values is education. So we're going to partner with this educational institute, whether it's a school or trade institute or whatever that educational arm is, and we're going to support it.
Right. Yeah.
Again,
Absolutely.
valuing the resources, right? Growing it.
Yep. Growing it. The secular nature, right, folks? It all feeds. And all it really takes is one easy small step. All it takes is one piece on your part to get started. Find what that is for you. And if you're already doing something, hey, right on, like let us know what that is.
Yeah.
Let people, there's this old thing in New Thought. And, see, you and I haven't talked about this, I don't think, quite a while, but there's this old belief in New Thought that we should do our work in a vacuum, that we should do our work in silence. And I read it, I forget where I read it the other day, just the other day, right? Don't tell anyone what you're doing. Don't tell anyone, your buddy, what you're praying for, because their disbelief in your vision could impact the eventual demonstration of your vision.
Mm-hmm.
Which to me, I say, well, that's BS. I don't have to believe that. I don't have to believe that your doubt has any power whatsoever in my ability to demonstrate what I'm working towards. However, we're taught that, right? Don't be too vocal about what you're creating, what you're praying for, what you're demonstrating. Go do your work and then let that speak for itself.
Well, and part of that, and I agree with that, and part of that I think is a misconception or misarticulation is, if I have an idea and I'm not confident in myself or I'm not confident in my idea or how I'm going to bring it about, then yeah, I ain't telling you, because I already know I'm weak. I already know I'm not, and weak in the sense of I'm not sure I can bring this thing to pass. So the moment I do, somebody say, "Oh, you can't do that." Da, 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 da.
Right,
So until I get my muscles built up, I'm only going to tell valued people who value me as a resource, who are built in the idea, as we say here, of growing this idea.
right,
And once we get in a place where I'm strong enough to stand on my own, boom, it's like a baby, right? When a baby starts to walk, everybody gets a walker. They put the baby in the walker and they let them bumble around and get the legs. You don't just tell them to stand up and walk, but after you see they've strengthened their legs, you take them out, and you don't take them in the middle of the street and say, "Look, my baby can walk." You do it in the living room until you sure that baby got some good legs, and then you and the baby go out for a walk, right? And everybody
right,
says, "Wow, what happened? Look how she or he has grown." Well, that's the same thing with these ideas and how about these resources that we want. Yeah, I mean, folks, I am an ardent believer and very emphatic about if we observe nature in its finest, from the ant all the way up to the cosmos, it provides us all the clues, all the insight, all the answers to whatever we need.
Right.
We have been given the crown of creation because we have the ability to observe these things and enact them in our lives, and nothing more profound than that statement is what's needed now to turn around where we are individually, collectively, and globally, to go through another growth cycle.
Right. Keep it growing. Keep feeding the growth cycle. Keep feeding the growth, and therefore we have more opportunity to be generous. We have more opportunity to really share what share who we are, and most especially all this stuff that's on the planet. Right. The truth is, folks, we're not taking any of it with us when we go, and so any hoarding is just an example of fear. It's a demonstration that I fear I'm not going to be supported, and that there won't be enough for me when I need. Now, I'm going to tell you, after all the years I've been on this planet, I have yet to ever really experience. Now, and I get it. I am of the privileged class, living in a first world country. I do not know any real hardship in my life. Some mental and emotional hardships, yeah, but no real hardship in my life. And through that, I've been able to come to that place there's just this ingrained confidence that if it's necessary in my life, it's going to show up when it's necessary. And if I have something that I don't need and you're out there saying, hey, anybody got this? Yeah, hey, let me share what I do have. Let me share if you need a book for a class, let me know. We'll share it. We'll find you a copy of the book. If whatever it might be, we are in this process of recreating how we get to look at life. Because
Mm-hmm.
too many of us were taught the scarcity lack model. Not enough, I'm not good enough. If you have yours, then somebody else doesn't have theirs. That there's a finite amount of anything on the planet. And what we know, again, the planet is great at regenerating itself.
Yep.
And it turns out we don't need all the oil we have anyway, so don't worry about running out of oil anymore. We used to live under that guise that
Yep.
we were going to run out of oil, so we had to pay a lot more for it. And we're creating a new world.
Right. And the wonderful thing about it in my mind is this whole approach to integral living,
Yeah.
which is what this speaks to, where everything is valued, everything is connected. I have to value everything. I have to care for it. I have to create an environment for it to grow because it's all integrated.
Right.
And the more we can see that, the better we will be able to allow the thing itself to continue to expand and open itself up and allow us to really engage with it. And what is that thing itself? Life, God. I mean, pick a name for that sacredness of what we call life, this
Yep.
game that we're playing, if you will, and begin to figure out the old adage, how do I want for my brother what I want for myself? And really mean it.
Yeah.
And really be able and willing to do what's necessary for everybody to rise. I mean, the old saying, when the tide rises, all boats rise. No,
Yep.
not just one, all of them rise.
And I love how you put that, right. That awakening and realization that we are living in an integral world, and we are integral to the expression of love and life on this planet.
Yes. Yes.
That every one of us is absolutely necessary. We don't all need a snowblower in our garage. We don't all need we don't need and when we come to that place of sharing resources, sharing information, sharing who we are and what we have, um, I've realized that here at my house, our garden. loves to grow zucchinis.
Hmm.
Peppers, not at all.
Yeah,
Uh, Other things I just can't grow. But some things we can grow and grow and grow. And so every year my wife's like, what do we plant? I'm like, we plant as much zucchini as we can.
right.
And then we trade that zucchini off at the fall.
Exactly. Because like I grew this year, I grew collard greens and kale.
Okay.
Way too much kale and collard green for me. I mean, way too much. And and I was in the store the other day and I looked. They had a little small bunch of collard greens for like $2. Man, I could have made a bunch of $2 bundles looking at that thing, man. Because I had like 8 collard green plants, and all you do is just take the right ones off the bottom, bundle them, and sell them. I literally, I got greens on them plants right now
Yep.
because they're cold weather. So this whole idea again of how do we value resources, and so that's a vision of new thought from a religious science perspective, and all new thought is the ability to create the platform for life, communication, exchange, uh, education. I mean, to
Right.
be available to everybody. Now, you can partake at it as you will,
Right.
but we want to make sure that it's available because at sometimes I may need more water than I need protein if I'm looking at it from my body perspective.
Hmm.
And if I get too out of whack, my body will start telling me, dude, you need some water.
Yep.
You're sluggish. There are things that happen when you begin to dehydrate, or things that happen when you don't have enough protein in your body. What's the same thing with the community? It's the same thing with the global community. If certain things are missing, they begin to show the manifestation of the absence of that thing. And right now, I would submit one of the things is peace, love, compassion, sharing, uh, because all those things create an environment for things to grow.
Yeah. Exactly. So folks, right, I've got to talk about it because that is in so many ways the impetus, the vision, the guiding principles behind New Thought Media Network, to create an environment where people can grow, and doing that by sharing positive music, positive media, positive messages, shows like this, programs like this. New Thought Today is a part of the New Thought Media Network because we are deeply committed to creating spaces, environments, experiences, community where we can grow as
Mhm.
individuals, as humans. And one of the ways that we do that is through music and the vibration of music. And I want to let you know we're going to take another 45-second break and learn a little bit about the New Thought Media Network's New Thought Radio. We'll be right back. New Thought Radio, music from all your favorite New Thought artists. From Jamie Lula, Karen Drucker, Gary Lynn Floyd, Ricky Byers, Daniel Namod, Eddie Watkins Jr., and many, many more. 24/7 New Thought Radio. Positively inspiring. And we're back. This is New Thought Today. I'm Reverend Robert. My dear co-host Rev Z is with me, and we've been looking at principle number 7 of the Global Heart Vision. It says we envision a world in which resources are valued, cared for, and grown, and where there is a generous and continuous sharing of these resources. And for the last bit, we've been talking here about how do we implement these things. One of the things we were chatting about yesterday, and we've neglected to mention here so far today, is the idea of community lending libraries. And right, in the from the original, right? I know there always was somebody loaning a bunch of books long before
Mhm.
there was the institution called the library. No matter how far we go back, it had to start with somebody saying, "Here, read this,"
Right.
and then somebody coming back and saying, "You got anything about this?" Yeah, I do. Hold on. So my family and I, we created a little one of those little libraries, and we did it a different way. We called the local newspaper. One of the local newspapers asked if they had any old newspaper boxes laying around. They said, "Yeah, we got tons of them. Come get one." And I even offered to pay for it. They were like, "No, no, just come get one and get it off our land." Okay. Took it apart, painted it up, and created a free library. And I'll tell you, we live on a cul-de-sac, so it's not even like it's in a high traffic area. And the rotation of books that happen through that little library, day in, there's people every day walking their dogs. Every day people stop and look and see if there's something new, take leave something. I've watched people come up with 2 3 books and to leave them so that it's one of those easy ways, folks, that we can activate this vibration, the activity of being generous and being in that place of continual sharing.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up because I wanted to say this from yesterday. I used to live in Australia, and when I was in Australia, my kids were very young, and we had a small place, and we didn't have a lot of stuff for toys. But they had a toy lending library. I lived in Melbourne, Australia, and they had a toy lending library. You could get your card, you got a card just like the regular library, and you can go and check out toys. And one, you could see if the kid really liked the toy, and then if you wanted to get your own, you got an opportunity. Or if it was something big or something that you didn't, want to have for long term, as the kids grow, you could borrow it for a couple of weeks, take it, and if just like a book, if nobody wanted it, you could extend it. So the same idea of a lending library for books, they had it for toys. What an idea that would do. Right now, we got people going out spending money for Christmas, and we love that, the charity and giving of that. But to be honest, a lot of kids are going to play with them toys for 2 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and they're going to
Hmm.
go to the side.
Right.
um and what great idea would it be to have a toy lending library? And then I thought about this earlier when you were talking about the snowblower. There's certain things like that. uh let's get a community snowblower and get a schedule
Yep.
for, today is my day. I do the left side of the street. Robert does the right side of the street. Uh,
Yep.
and again, everybody doesn't have to go buy a $800,000 uh
Yeah. Snowblower.
snowblower and be stuck with doing it.
My community, our cul-de-sac again. So one, two, three, four, five, 6 houses on the cul-de-sac. Two of the gentlemen own snowblowers, and I don't know if they're competing or not. But the truth is, they both love running their machines. They both love being out there doing it. I can't. I don't want to do it really. I got work. So, uh, first snowstorm, I went out with a gas can and said, "Okay, let me fill up your machine." And every time, and anytime your machine, and now I just, and that's part of getting to know your neighbors. That's part
Right.
of being in a neighborhood, in a community, and being able to say, "Hey, look, I don't have one of those machines. I'll gladly buy you as much gas as you need throughout the winter. You just make sure my sidewalks are clean so I don't get a ticket, and do my
Yep.
driveway if it gets deep." They love doing it. It's Go ahead.
And I was just, you know, that's your way of valuing the resources. They're
Yep.
going to get, they like it, they get a pleasure, meditative, whatever going on. And you say, I can value that resource by giving them what they need to do that,
Right.
to help the whole neighborhood, but they also get their meditative exercise or whatever it is they get from it right there. Everybody's contributing. What a great idea,
Yep. So
man. I
now, so here's the challenge, right, folks? What can you do? We know you can. We know there are opportunities. Perhaps you live in Southern California and you're listening to us going, "What? Snowblowers, huh?" Right? But what is it? Perhaps you've always had that dream of running a food co-op.
Mhm.
Truth is, it's not that tough to get a 501c3 nonprofit for a food co-op. Takes a little bit of time. You got to put some effort into it, just like anything else. Uh, Maybe it's not a food co-op. Maybe it's just an agreement with your neighbors that I can't grow peppers, but you can. Let me trade you what I can grow for what you can grow.
Mhm.
Perhaps it is getting a little more involved, starting a drive, uh, volunteering at the food pantry. That's another one we didn't talk about, but I've
Yeah.
seen community. So our little library idea and a toy library idea. These folks put together an open food pantry, a refrigerator plugged in on the side of the street, and food in the fridge. Come and take what you need. Now
Wow.
that's a trusting community, and I think that's a vision we can work for as well.
Mhm.
I think that's inherent within what we're discussing here is the global vision, is a community where everybody knows there's more than enough. And
Yeah.
we're going to share what we have because it doesn't do me any good going spoiled tomorrow when there'll be more than enough the day after that as well.
And imagine what that would cultivate in society. An idea where everybody understands. The thing is, people say, "Oh, that's going to make people lazy if they can just," but it won't.
Right.
I promise you it won't. It because they will begin to value and they will find ways to give back, even if they're underemployed or unemployed or whatever the situation, they'll find a way to give back because that's just how the human psyche and the body and the integralness of everything works.
Yeah. I have yet, I've known a lot of people, seen a lot of experiences, and for them, and really 99% of the time, people want to give. They want to feel valued. And we have to share with they and let them know that it isn't what you do that is brings your value, it's who you are. It's
Hmm.
the fact that you show up and say, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'll give it a try.
Hmm.
Or, hey, I'm not much, I'll lift boxes, I'll move food in a pantry, I'll do this. It's being part of the solution rather than sitting around saying, it ain't gonna work, so why am I gonna do anything?
Right, right.
Right?
Yeah, yeah. And you just made me think. I would be willing to bet if you were to talk to your neighbors who did the snow blowing, they get a sense of value of that.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, and that's the one thing that each of us can help cultivate in one another is a sense of value by appreciating what they do and letting them know and saying thank you. Because again, it gets back to the core of this vision, which is valuing the resources, helping it grow, and showing that you care. Just a hi. Good morning. Did you run out of gas yet? I care that you keep this thing done. Did you run out of gas? Did you get the oil check? Do we need to go sharpen the blades if it's a weed eater or whatever? Whatever the thing is,
right.
it opens up that and I loved what you said. But it begins to open up the dialogue because and I hope I get this metaphor right. We we have a bunch of neighborhoods, but we have very few communities
Yeah,
because the neighborhood would be Park Ridge neighborhood. But it only becomes a community when the people in that neighborhood know each other and interact and look out for each other and support one another. Because other than that, it's just a Pine Ridge neighborhood.
right. Yep. You can slap a label on any group of houses and call it a neighborhood. But it takes real people and it takes a real commitment and it takes real dedication to doing something differently to, or at least differently than most of us have been taught,
Well, yeah, yeah,
at
and
least over the last 30 years or so.
yeah, and that exactly, and I think you know if we kind of look forward right to what after as Robert said, next week we're going to have Reverend Doctor um, David
Yeah,
Alexander with us. But coming from that, it's going to be the next version we look at is going to be about forgiveness.
yeah,
And so, tying that to this one, think about. what it means to value a resource just by forgiving or being forgiven.
Hmm.
Again, it's in that same vein.
Yep, exactly. So, all right, folks, I think we have effectively filled this hour of our day with New Thought today. We want to thank you for being with us. If you're enjoying what you're hearing here, you like what you're hearing here, by all means, please tell a friend. And as Z would say, tell a friend who will tell a friend.
Yes.
Right? We're here. We're having these conversations, and we want you, and we invite you to please share this with those that you think would be interested, that would find benefit here, because what we believe is, hey, this is how we care for the global vision. We value this philosophy. We value what we've learned and how this has supported us over the years and over our lives. And so this is one of the ways that we go about caring for it. And what we know is
Yeah.
that if you're still with us, you're ready to share this as well. A generous sharing of resources, a continual sharing of those resources. So thank you for being with us today.
Yeah. And we consider this to be a resource for sure. Um, to give you new ideas, to ways of looking at things, to as they say, sharpen your ideas on by the things that we say, whether you agree with them or not. It's that idea of sharpening your wit, your understanding, and commitment to creating a world that works for everyone, that makes the whole world go round.
Yeah, exactly. And if you'd like to keep the conversation going around, you're more than welcome to. We are happy to, we'll respond to comments following the show online. And you're welcome to send us an email, ministertalk@ntmedia.org. You know, if there's something you'd like us to cover, or a finer point or a finer detail about what we've been discussing, we'd love to chat with you on via email. So hit that up. Also, please do know that your support on YouTube is greatly, greatly appreciated. If you do a search for New Thought Media Network on YouTube, or if you're watching us on YouTube, please subscribe and turn on the bell so you get notified when we go live. Finally, yes, today is Giving Tuesday, and we would appreciate your donations to this mighty ministry. We are a 501c3 organization, and that means your donations are tax deductible as allowed by law. So, as allowed by your law or man's law. I better shut up before I get in trouble with the lawyers. Thank you for your contributions. And as part of that, we want you to know at the New Thought Media Network, through the first week of December here, from today, Giving Tuesday, until next week is Giving Wednesday, is Colorado Gives Day. We're also going to pass on a portion of all the donations submitted to our ministry this week to another great work, Refugee Film Camp, and helping refugee teens get the resources, leadership, and really the resources they need to break out of the poverties of cycle that some of them are in and support their families. So learn a little bit more about Refugee Film School over on our website, ntmedia.org. Z, I think we've done it.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, uh, as we always say, life is circular, a life is spiral. So a lot of these ideas, you're going to see them coming back at you more and more and more, so that they get grounded. And I'm excited about, where we're headed and what we're doing, and looking forward to your, i.e., the audience participation and comments and points. And even if you disagree, let us know. So that's how we do it. My phrase, as Robert knows, is conversate and educate. That's what makes it happen.
Yep. All right. Next week, we'll be back with Reverend Dr. David Alexander as our special guest, and we'll be discussing the last three of these principles 5, 6, and 7. So tell a friend to tell a friend, and join us for that again next week. Until then, dear ones, peace and blessings. Bye
Peace
now.
and blessings.